I mean, it's a long story, but I had to try and get the message to Phil, who made them on there, to get the phone out of there. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. It's too long. But after 6 days, Josh, I was finished there. I got on my knees and I prayed. And I'll never forget the feeling of like warm water being poured over me. And I only prayed once before, and I'm not joking, once before that. I got lost during the war. I was 19. And it's a long story, but it was hectic. I was in a very serious situation in the middle of a very dangerous area, yeah. And I was all alone. I was at school. I was 18 years old, 1979. And I got on my knees on the top of that mountain just as it was getting dark. And I prayed. And there wasn't a settlement or anyone living within 20K radius. I mean, I was in the middle of nowhere. And I had this feeling of like warm water being poured over me. And I had no idea what it was. I mean, I was wild, check those space, drinking and fighting and everything. Yeah. And I just stood up very calmly, like something was just saying, walk the same way you'd come up, walk down this solid granite mountain. When I got to the bottom, when the solid granite went into the soil, was long grass. And I just carried on walking. Somebody said, just walk. And I walked and walked. And 10 meters further were 2-car tire tracks. My uncle shot a kudu bull there during the rains the year before.
Wow.
Now, Josh, let me tell you, it's 25,000 acres with a handful of roads and very few fences, and none anywhere near where I was. So that's how far back the Lord was trying to reach me, because I followed those tracks. They faded. Then I saw where they cut the trees to get the car in there and through these mountains till I got to the main road where they were all lined up shouting, looking for me the whole day. And I never told anyone what happened on that mountain that day, because I thought they'd laugh at me. I think I was crazy. And that's how it was in those days. So when it happened on death row, I knew straight away. I said, no.
It's not a coincidence.
It's like enough. I just sat on the floor, leaning against the wall. And within 30 minutes, I faintly heard my Afrikaans mate shouting from the sub ground, "Hey, Ras, everything's okay." So I thought, okay. Bad on the concrete, looking out for the darkness. Within 10 minutes, I locked my door. Those metal locks, that noise goes right through. Shake me in my clothes. Said the officer in charge wanted to see you. So I go out into the blinding sun, across the courtyard, up the stairs to his office. His exact words were, he said, "Hello, Russ." I said, "Hello, officer." He said, "Have you remembered the girl's name yet?" I said, "No, officer." He said, "I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave it in God's hands. You can go back to your cell."
Wow.
And at the exact moment when I was praying, my sister was paying him $200 to get me out of there. And that was a huge turning point in my spiritual walk, Josh. Then I started realizing, and I still didn't go home for 2.5 years, but I knew there was something bigger in this whole thing. There's no ways those 2 incidences, then I knew that there's a higher power involved here. But when I got released then, Josh, it was tough. I was working for guys who used to work for me.
What does it feel like to step outside of prison after 10 years?
It was like heaven, but it was tough, Josh. And the amazing thing was, I don't want to divert too much because I want to carry on the spiritual walk, but the biggest difference for me, Josh, wasn't the streets and the houses and the trees. It was the people. Like some of them, it's like, what happened to you, John? Have you eaten your kids? Oh, that's huge. And others hadn't aged at all.
Wow.
And that made me realize how people sometimes just forget about looking after themselves, And so the first few years working for guys who used to work for me was tough, Josh, and far away from God. I didn't remember him. I didn't pray, nothing, because it was hard. And then when I was doing a safari and I met a guy who was the head of a big company here in South Africa, and I told him my story, and I'd done a talk for about 120 farmers at a sit-down dinner in Harare Rural Golf Club. And it had a huge impact. And he asked me if I had a copy of that speech. So I said, yeah, and had a look at it. He read it. Said, "I've got a new life for you, my friend. This is your calling and I want to help you." So I said, "No, Jan, you've had too much red wine." And sure enough, he flew me to Joburg and we put a PowerPoint together and started traveling around Hoedspruit, Nelspruit, all over. Just talking to all Zimbabwean gatherings. And then a speaking bureau heard about it. And that's when I met my wife. That was in 2016. And she was very close to the Lord. And that's where my spiritual walk started moving, because I was more hungry. And then, ironically, we got to live with Pastor Ray McCauley for 8 months.
Wow.
For 6 months, in his cottage. And I got very close to Pastor Ray. And, in his church, I'd listen to him every Sunday. And then that other big speakers like Creflo Dollar and Rick Godwin and Tommy Barnett. And I listened to all of them, Josh, but it never, because I also gave my life to the Lord in 2018, but I didn't open my eyes and everything was different. So, and then after that, listening to all these guys, it still didn't make me totally, or break those walls around me that I'd built up, especially after prison. And I think I probably had a lot of demons still in me from those guys. And then 2019, we were offered a free trip to Israel. And that was, I just wish I could go again now.
Wow.
Because, my journey hadn't really started, Josh. And I learned, I remember looking at the street where Jesus carried the cross. And it was
Something, yeah.
Yeah, and then going into the tomb where they laid him to rest. And you could feel when you're going there, sure. I mean, it's
So there's a presence.
Yeah, and then, in Capernaum, all the foundations are still there, and you walk and you're just thinking, Jesus walked here, and that's where he started his ministry.
That's so cool.
And so that was on the Sea of Galilee,
Yeah.
floating in the Dead Sea. But in that trip, Josh, we were very, very privileged to have Angus Buchan speak at the Feast of Tabernacles.
Wow.
Yeah, and the 4,500 of us. And I remember, I know we're running out of time, Josh, so I'm trying to push it. The 4,500 people, when you go in there, you get a little thing to eat and a bottle of water. And as you walk in, you're given that and you go through. And as I walked through, there was a tall guy there, like American accent. And he said to me, "Are you a preacher?" So I said, "No," it's a friendly guy. And I'm drinking. And he said, God's going to place a mantle upon you. I looked at him and said, "Oh, he's very friendly." So anyway, he prophesied a little bit more on me. Said, "You must position yourself." And I had no idea what he was talking about. And then when he left, I remember saying to my wife, because he also prophesied over her. And I said to her, "Babe, what's a mantle?" I mean, I had no idea what anything was. But after that, I found out who he was. He was a very prominent prophet.
Wow.
But Angus Buchan, so we go in there and Angus is preaching. And at the end, Josh, he made everyone vow that they would read the Bible, because the message was about the power of the word. And we all vowed, and then I said to my wife, if I make a vow, I'm going to do it. And I tried to read the Bible many times and it just didn't make sense.
Yeah, it gets quite...
Probably
yeah.
New King James, that. And so I thought, okay. So she said, "Now you buy an NIV and you start reading it." And I started devouring this manly stuff, these killings and wars and okay. And I loved it, but
Yeah.
I think I've read it like 3.5 times. I love it. I mean, I'm a huge Christian now.